Hi, everybody, and welcome to Build Peace 2020. We are delighted that you're joining us for this virtual conference this year. It's wonderful to be here with everybody. And very concretely, I'm very happy to be on these opening remarks with Nedisa, Fergus, and Kate, who are from Bertha Center and Build Up, respectively, representing the two or co-organizers this year. Yes, exactly. And I actually asked all of them because we thought, this is kind of like the opening coffee session. So I told them, please bring your coffee mug and tell us why you've got it. So I'm going to start with mine since I've got the mic. This is my coffee mug. And this is a coffee mug from the MIT Center for Civic Media, who was the first host of the 2014 Build Peace Conference. So cool. Thanks for joining us. And Kate, would you like to go next?
Yeah, I'm Kate Mitty and calling in from Boston, but my coffee mug's from Omaha. This is in part because we just wanted to also express just solidarity and care for the US election and still sort of our consistent sort of hope for a transparent, fair, and peaceful election at the same time. So wanted to hold sort of those variety of geographies here. Nedisa, over to you.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. My name is Nedisa. I'm beaming in from Cape Town. That is my coffee mug. I hope you can see that there's an elephant here. So the story behind that, it was the only coffee mug in the house that actually had a story. And the story around that is that practice. I mean, they're my closest friends, but one of the things that we have in common is that we observe some form of contemplative practice. And at some part of our relationship, we started to refer to ourselves as a herd of elephants because someone read somewhere that elephants, when they're moving together, doing a great massive crossing, if there's one that's ill, it doesn't sit on the outskirts and straggle off and becomes prey to predators. It goes into the middle of the herd and is therefore protected by the rest of the herd and is able to lean on its fellow elephants as they continue together. Yeah, a few birthdays after that story was mythologized around us, this coffee mug became a present for me from one of my elephants. Fergus, tagging you.
Cheers. Fergus Turner dialing in from Cape Town. As you can see, we have scarves in Cape Town. It's cold. It's a wonderful cold.
Don't laugh.
And this coffee cup is a play on my capoeira apelido. I'm a capoeirista, and my nickname is Goose. So my good friend Frankie got this for my 30th birthday in honor of those memories as capoeiristas back in the day. And it doesn't have a lot of coffee in it at the moment, which may be a bit of a problem later on down the line. Thank you so much. Over to you, Kense. Good to be with you all.
Hi, everyone. I'm Kense Khadeb. I'm also in Cape Town. This is my coffee mug, but actually I'm a tea drinker. So this is actually, I've been drinking, I think this is my 6th cup of tea. This was bought for me by a close friend of mine, and she actually bought it with me with like a whole bunch of different teas. I usually drink rooibos or any kind of black tea, but it allowed me to venture out and experiment with all kinds of floral and citrus flavors. And it was just a reminder to not always just stay in the box that I stay in. So yeah, that's me.
I love that, the round of coffee mugs. And so this Build Peace Conference is a collaboration between Bertha Center and Build Up. It's actually the 7th Build Peace Conference. And we thought we'd start with having Fergus tell us a bit about why Bertha Center decided to collaborate on Build Peace 2020. So Fergus, it's all you.
Thank you so much. To set us off, before I describe a little more about how that came to be, it's important to mention that we were looking forward to welcoming you here in Cape Town. Cape Town is a big reason for that why. And with that in mind, I'd like to invite everybody on this call to take a moment preferably eyes closed, or just look inwards, wherever you feel good. And I'd like to share with you a poem from actually my dear cousin, back when she was 9 years old and left Cape Town. And I think it's a, there you go, that's a Cape Town train. It's an apt homage to Cape Town and what Cape Town feels like as the beautiful place we've come to know it to be. It goes like this. If you're not from Cape Town, you don't know the wind. You can't know the wind. It whips around corners with lightning speed. Give it rules or regulations, it won't pay no heed. While you're peacefully sleeping, your windows will rattle. When walking to school, the gale you must battle. If you're not from Cape Town, you don't know the wind. If you're not from Cape Town, you don't know the fynbos. You can't know the fynbos that grows wild and free and covers the mountains, fresh and beautiful like water gushing from fountains. Joy to one's heart its amazing scent brings. To just walk among it, some would give diamond rings. If you're not from Cape Town, you don't know the fynbos. If you're not from Cape Town, you don't know the sea. You can't know the sea, crashing in rhythm upon sharp, jagged rocks. It houses the sharks that are as sly as a fox. It washes in waves over beaches soaked by the sun. In the pounding surf, you can play, frolic, and have fun. If you're not from Cape Town, you don't know the sea. If you're not from Cape Town, you don't know the mountains. You can't know the mountains, towering above the city, rugged and tall, huge and impressive, like China's Great Wall. Covered in plant life, an animal's home, among them for hours, a pure soul can roam. If you're not from Cape Town, you don't know the mountains. If you're not from Cape Town, you don't know the sun. You can't know the sun, so high in the sky, beautiful and bright, showering the land with warm, pure light, piercing the darkness and warming the soul, comforting and warm, like soup in a bowl. If you're not from Cape Town, you don't know the sun. If you're not from Cape Town, you don't know me. You can't know me. I am the mountains, the sun and the sea, the land and its people are all part of me. I fly with the wind as fast as a falcon. This is my home, where I'm always welcome. A beautiful place. And beauty is often synonymous with complexity, with detail that surfaces upon knowing the nuances of whatever it is that we hold true and beloved. And just as Cape Town is beautiful and stunning, it is also complex, dynamic, painful, and deeply challenging. And with that in mind, back in 2018 at Build Peace, the 5th Build Peace, back in Northern Ireland, Belfast, I noticed that the conference, the sensation of being at a Build Peace conference, had as much to do with the way that it was being convened, the way that it was being held, as it had to do with the content and the discussions and the workshops and the sessions. And that really reminded me of something. It reminded me of how we do things, how we speak about things, how we convene here in Cape Town with the Bertha Center for Social Innovation and Entrepreneurship. And this led me to remark upon the closing session of Build Peace 2018 that wouldn't it be a good idea to bring this to Cape Town? A conflict-affected, incredibly complex, beautiful, and wild space, a space that calls out for holding with grace and at the same time deliberate action. And that is very much where the meeting of Bertha Center and Build Up comes to a head. Bertha Center is a specialized unit within the broader University of Cape Town ecosystem, here based at the Graduate School of Business. And as a partnership between the Graduate School of Business and the Bertha Foundation, its core mission is to support social justice work and advocacy through social innovation, through research, teaching, catalyzing of radical partnerships, and convening towards change in these key sectors. Sectors like the innovative finance industry, education, executive education, and the health space, to name a few. And so within Bertha Center, we have a selection of teams that represent these different project areas. And Nadesa, Kense, and I are with the Systems Justice and Innovation team, where we look at the intersection between systems work, systems thinking, systems sensibilities, and social justice work. And we recognized back in 2018 that there were many similarities between the way that we approach our work, an emphasis on understanding underlying systemic properties of the kind of phenomena that we experience and are trying to shift, as well as a focus on building our cohorts and building the capacities of more agile and empathetic teams towards peace and justice in the world. And so that is really the reason of being for this coming together. Of course, alongside that, we get along very well and like to challenge one another. And so with that, I'm going to hand back to Elena to share a little bit more about the process that led us to this Build Peace 2020 in Cape Town in spirit. Thank you.
Thanks, Fergus. That was beautiful. And I can see people in the chat already requesting that you send the poem out. So we'll have to make sure that that happens in the announcements part of the platform. And I think, having been with us since 2018, Fergus, and for others who are listening who have been to this conference over the years, that Build Up is really a conversation that evolves over the years and that reflects what is around us. In the first 4 years, I think we really focused on the opportunities afforded to peace builders by digital technologies, on technology as a tool for peace, for shifting power towards local voices. And there was a sense of excitement at all that we could do. And I think over the past 2 years, the conversation has shifted. At some point, we all began to recognize that technology was not a tool external to the conflict context that we were in, whether that was Cape Town or Belfast or wherever we were talking, but an integral part of that context. And we sort of started to reflect on the duality of how technology is affecting conflict dynamics. There's more polarization and fragmentation. There's also more plurality and inclusion. And then came the COVID-19 pandemic. And I think as peace builders, we need to really pay attention to what the pandemic is doing to the fabric that keeps our societies together, what divisions are being exacerbated, and how that shifts the balance of power. And of course, many of those effects of the pandemic on conflict have nothing to do with digital technology, but rather with the social, political, and economic inequities that the pandemic is deepening. But some are very specific to digital technology. In a nutshell, I think social distancing means that more of our lives are taking place online. And it's made it imperative that we dig a little deeper into understanding this socio-technical ecology, this evolving system that we exist in, because it is changing how conflicts unfold and how we engage with conflict. I think this year I keep asking myself, how much is it worth risking polarization and fragmentation in order to build a truly plural and inclusive society? How do we influence this balance in our socio-technical ecology, which is a lot. So I've made an attempt at digging deeper, and I made a little diagram, which I'm hoping I can show you if this share screen thing works. I think that's working. And I'm just going to talk about it a little bit. I think most of our attention as peace builders has been to date on the tip of this pyramid that hopefully you're seeing on your screen, which is the deliberate use of digital technologies to promote division, to attack social cohesion. The next layer under it, where I've got disinformation and covert targeting, it's more covert uses of technology, but still deliberate. I think we're all becoming increasingly aware of the dangers in these two layers. Platforms are addressing them with rules and terms of service. Peace builders are addressing them through content moderation and digital literacy programs. But when you think about it, this is pretty limited. The things that are happening in these two layers at the top are signals of deeper divisions that technology is worsening by amplifying human weaknesses. It's important to address hate speech and disinformation and recruitment, but we're peace builders. So I think we need to go deeper and address the issues that are central to social cohesion, which is what I've put at the bottom of the pyramid, right? As peace builders, we don't think social cohesion is everyone agreeing all the time. That would be the peace of the graveyards. It's definitely not the peace that I want. Social cohesion is not the closure of debate, but a space in which pluralism can flourish peacefully. And to hold this space, we work against our neurological hardwiring to define groups by exclusion and to communicate that exclusion aggressively. We try to foster nonviolent communications that enable the personal and collective transformation for this space to hold. When we work on peace building, when we try to solve for social cohesion, we're essentially addressing the issues that are at the center of the human condition. And so that's why the third layer, the one that says misinformation, algorithmic profiling, that one is the one that worries me particularly. Because beneath the overt use of digital technologies to foster division is this broader systemic effect that digital technologies are having on human communication and on human neurology. I'm going to stop sharing that and I can share it later. But think about disinformation and misinformation for a minute. So just so we're clear, disinformation is creating and spreading incorrect information to intentionally deceive or manipulate others. Misinformation is spreading incorrect information without the intent to deceive, usually as a result of manipulation. Most disinformation is aimed at alienating a group or a person. In other words, disinformation uses a lie to close debate, to simplify the narrative rather than allow for plurality. But then that lie spreads. It becomes misinformation because our brains kind of love heuristic simplicity. And it spreads more because most digital technologies amplify this very human weakness. Most digital platforms have a surveillance capitalist business model. Their monetization strategy is to gather large amounts of data so they can build models or profiles for every individual user that help predict their actions. To get that data, they need users to engage again and again, and to drive engagement, they favor content that is simple and that we already agree with. It's not that algorithms couldn't push a different kind of content. Catherine O'Neill likes to say that algorithms are opinions embedded in code. And the opinion of most platform technologies is that they need more quantity of engagement, more of our attention on stuff, on any stuff. And fostering complexity doesn't serve this attention extraction model. Okay, so that's already pretty bad, right? But there's another thing that I think is worse at this level. Because even if an algorithm is presenting me with stuff I agree with, I could go elsewhere, right? I could behave differently. I could post and share nuanced content. But so why don't people just not spread disinformation? Why do even your reasonable friends post crazy stuff? The other way that digital technologies drive engagement is by pinging us all the time and creating an addiction to chasing things, right? To chasing these things. We post for the likes, we share for the laughs. The design of notifications is largely influenced by this nudge theory, which was pioneered by the Persuasive Technology Lab at Stanford University. Their theory of change is to hardwire habits. It's a manipulation tactic that changes the incentives that our brains respond to. So algorithms and nudges are resulting in this gradual, slight, imperceptible change in your own behavior and perception. It's almost indistinguishable from magic. Ultimately, the subtle behavior change that surveillance capitalism trades in means we have less control over who we are and what we really believe. As individuals, because habit hardwiring is deeply influencing us, and as a collective, because we engage with different content and so have less of a shared understanding of reality. And you might think that this is only affecting the digital space. Honestly, I don't think there's so much distinction anymore between who we are online and who we are offline. But there are also so many offline spaces where the effect of surveillance capitalism, of data being used to influence our perception of reality, is obvious. One of those is urban space. And I don't need to tell the 3 South Africans on this panel about that. In recent years, smart CCTV systems have been rolled out across most of your major cities. These systems are powered by facial recognition. They scrutinize people's demographics and movement for a pre-coded set of unusual behaviors that very thinly disguise a racial bias and exacerbate all of the post-apartheid injustice in urban space. Okay, I at least need to take a breath after having splurged all of that out. So I'm going to read you a quote by Adrian Brooks that I turn to when I'm feeling a little bit like, what is going on? And it says, things are not getting worse. They are getting uncovered, and we must hold each other tight and continue to pull back the veil. And I actually think we're all going through this unveiling in 2020, that somehow the pandemic has made this socio-technical soup we're swimming in so much more evident. Some people are saying the way to address this is through individual behavior. And I just want to be clear that I don't think that we should all go analog. Evan Greer made a comment on Twitter in response to the recent Netflix documentary about social media. They said, one of my problems with the social dilemma is that it makes the mistake a lot of tech observers are making. It treats social media as if it's cigarettes, something that's addictive and bad with no value at all. The internet is more like sex, drugs, and rock and roll. So abstinence is not the answer, right? My life is better due to sex, drugs, rock and roll, and the internet. Behavior change is part of the answer, but it's not to say don't do it. It's rather to say do it differently. And at Build Up, we run programs that intervene on social media platforms to first foster more plural and complex conversations. And through doing so, to influence our own consciousness around human communication. I think there's a lot more that we can do in this space to move away from behaviors in digital spaces that result in identity, polarization, and social division. But it's also going to take more than individuals changing their behaviors to alter this socio-technical ecology we are in. It's not about regulation of content and publication, because there is a great liberation in the ability of anyone to speak up and be heard. The internet has dismantled the concentration of information and communication power in the hands of a few, and we should protect that. I guess I'm saying we need to risk some fragmentation and polarization for the sake of a plural and inclusive society. And anyway, the key is not about content. It's not about that top layer of the pyramid, but about how it spreads and captures our attention, right? What would it take for platforms to be built the best, to support the best in us rather than to exploit the weaknesses of the human condition? I really think this is only going to happen if we dismantle the surveillance capitalist business models that many digital technologies rest upon. We could demand an ethical code for algorithm and nudge designs. We could tax companies in the amount of data they hold or have community-owned data. It's complicated, this unveiling. But I think as peace builders, we have so much to do in this space, and the content of this conference is a testament to that. So I'm also going to end with a poem, much like Fergus started, and it's a poem called Good Bones by Maggie Smith, and it says, "Life is short, though I keep this from my children. Life is short, and I've shortened mine in 1,000 delicious, ill-advised ways. 1,000 deliciously ill-advised ways I'll keep from my children. The world is at least 50% terrible, and that's a conservative estimate, though I keep this from my children. For every bird, there is a stone thrown at a bird. For every loved child, a child broken, bagged, sunk in a lake. Life is short, and the world is at least half terrible, and for every kind stranger, there is one who would break you, though I keep this from my children. I am trying to sell them the world. Any distant realtor walking me through a horrible shithole chirps on about good bones. This place could be beautiful, right? You could make this place beautiful." So we have this tradition at Build Peace of having a slogan. And I'd like to propose that our slogan for Build Peace 2020 could be that you could make this place beautiful. And I'd love to know, Nadisa, what you think about that. Could we make this place beautiful?
You see, I just want to raise my fist again, so I'm going to. And obviously, in a short word, the answer would be yes. And I'm going to answer that question from my own experience, my earliest experience of exactly that. Making a space beautiful, a social space beautiful, despite the polarization that was amplified in the urban spaces, despite the polarization that was amplified in all sorts of other kind of systems that were in place. And it's self-referential. I grew up in Umtata, apartheid South Africa. Now, the early 80s, and some of you might have heard me share the story. I think for the purposes of this conversation, it bears repetition, so please bear with me. And the context of apartheid South Africa was that, well, in one sphere around education specifically, it meant that those who, the Black kids got Bantu education, which was substandard, and did not compare to the education that was available to our white counterparts. I say Black, capital B. And my parents, for a while, and their peers tried to work within that system, right? And what that system meant was that, you know, kids went to schools that were overcrowded, The teachers themselves weren't getting remunerated in a way that made sense. They weren't getting educated. The consequences were really unacceptable. And my parents and their peers tried to work within that system. They drive ridiculously long distances. They trying to find a comparable level of education. And at some point, luckily for me, I'm the last of 6, right? When I arrived, and it was time, not when I arrived, but by the time it was time for me to go into, I think it's primary education, my parents and their peers who had children who were my same age decided to look at it differently, right? They'd been problematizing the system that they were giving their children into and problematizing the fact that it was based on values that didn't align, that weren't cognizant with the values that they held for their children. So whereas the apartheid system said education system or access to it is based on race, let's put it that way, for them, for my parents, and for all parents, I'm sure, the education system is seen as an inalienable right and an opportunity for children, for their curiosity to be fostered, for them to be mirrored so that they may grow, right? And grow in all of the, the ways that we wish for our children, in the positive ways that we wish for our children. So what they did is they took that value system and decided to build something within an unacceptable system from those sets of values. Was the manager of a hotel, and he said, "There's a classroom that's available. There's a room, sorry, that's available. That can be a classroom." Another parent knew of this teacher, May de la Rey. Everyone used to talk about them. They were like, "This is the teacher about her. This is the teacher our children deserve." So they headhunted her. They headhunted a principal, Auntie Daphne. To this day, I do not know her last name, but she drove a really funky little yellow car. And basically, between themselves, they recognized the resources that weren't being used, and they reconfigured them. And they reconfigured their own roles as parents into founders of a school. And in so doing, reconfigured the power dynamics that they were in order to actually be able to make decisions, right? And they started a school. And it was made up of just those 15 of us, I think it was, all of their children. Those who couldn't quite make the fees were subsidized by others. Like they hustled and they made a plan. Because although the system said all of the things that it was saying that were unacceptable, it did not say to them, "You may not start a school." So they do that, and the school stands to this day. It's called Vela, which means appear, arise. Vela is something that the sun, Velas, the sun. And we went through it, right? And we got that foundation, we got that shot that we needed. And not only that, but other parents who came after them, who were faced with the exact same issue in neighboring towns, saw that and went, "Oh, that can be done. Let's do the same for our children." So that's my answer to the question. Yes, we can. And as I've been listening, and as we engage and navigate these paths, like, we know our social systems need healing, guys. I'm not, as Fergus said, we're part of the social systems team. We talk the systems language, but more and more, the language becomes an abstraction. What our social systems need is healing, right? And at the same time, we don't want to become what it is that we are fighting or trying to change. And the invitation and the opportunity here is to amplify, as you say, Helena, amplify. We can create and bring beauty in by amplifying the beauty that already exists. Now, I also want to just quickly, briefly comment on the pyramid that you pointed to. And I want to comment on it quickly, because when I first met you, Helena, you talked about being a systems thinker. Somebody said that the work that we do is navigate, we're systems thinkers. And I don't know. Am I? And just that very pyramid that you put together, which very eloquently articulates and starts to emerge the dynamics that are holding the toxic system in place, the dynamics and the feedbacks that are actually sustaining that system. What that pyramid does is it looks at the different levels and starts to peer around those dynamics. that is systems thinking at play. And I guess part of the invitation is that all of us who are convened here, all of those who are working towards building peace within the social systems that necessarily need to heal, you are doing systems work. And there's an opportunity in our convening as well to kind of connect in with some of the frameworks and the tools, which we're not going to do right now. I know that there's a systems justice lab that will be happening at some point as well. I urge you to be part of it. But the invitation as well is to self-identify as doing this work. Let's self-identify, let's play with those frameworks, let's break them together and learn from them where they are in service, and break them when they are in service to bringing in healing. Yeah, I'm going to stop there. Thanks.
That was wonderful, Nadisa. Thank you, and thank you for making that additional invitation as well. I think it's a real fit. Kate, I know we're a little bit over time, but I think you're going to give us a bit of a quick run through what's happening next, basically.
Absolutely. I am here to close out the opening session with a few logistics, and we'll run and just invitations to join us and be in community over the next few days. I know we're virtual, and so have some ideas on how we can bridge some of that too. So first off, if you're listening to this, you made this into the platform, so well done. And that is always an exciting move when we're sort of moving into any new venue. And so just wanted to say that if you run into issues with the conference and with the streaming, the reload button on your browser or on your cell phone is your best friend. If that doesn't work as sort of a first backup, the second backup is just to log out of the conference and come back into the conference. And sometimes both of those processes sort of reset any of the digital issues, assuming sort of everything else is working. And if you're running into other questions, I mean, I think this is for many of us the first time we're using this platform. And so just wanted to say that the info desk, which is available in the lobby, is always available and open for questions or information. In terms of the type of content and like the variety of folks that are coming into this space and sort of shaping this space with us, we have a handful of main ways to engage. So on the main stage, we'll have keynotes. The first one will start in a few minutes here on this same stage. We have 3 keynotes covering each of the key theme areas. So urban survey. Today it's identity polarization. Tomorrow it's urban space. And the final day is surveillance capitalism. You'll see 2 panels throughout the next few days. One is by the Systems Justice Lab, which was just introduced today in this sort of opening session. And an incredible art project that is being launched today, but also is sort of speaking about gender within South Africa and through sort of an art lens. Short talks, I always feel like this is like a variety of ways to just insert yourself into somebody else's brain for a minute, for 10 minutes. And we've got a variety of different topics on short talks underneath each one of those themes, from Rahman, who is a Nigerian filmmaker based in the United States, speaking about film and conflict, to Ona Wang, who is speaking about how do we prevent or sort of avoid toxic polarization. And while we won't have questions and answers during the actual short talk period, each one of the short talks will be followed with Q&As with each one of the short talk speakers that you can find as smaller side sessions. We've also mixed in a lot of art. Art is sort of center and crucial to build peace and just really how we all think about how peace building happens. And so there's 2 performances, one today, one tomorrow. I've heard a lot of rumors about just the joyful celebration that's going to happen there, but also just the care and sort of the thought and love that's going to be communicated through those spaces. And the final 3 spaces are workshops. Workshops are the main sort of interactive space, the space where you can sort of move beyond the chat. Each one of those has a different design. You'll find workshops on dancing, using art to imagine an abolitionist space, developing a framework for cybersecurity skills. I think the only important thing to know here is that you have to register for a workshop within sort of the agenda on the platform. We also have Expo Booths, which are showcasing a variety of different projects, technology, and art, from harmful speech resources to big data and artificial intelligence. You can visit the expo at any time, but know that the times that are specifically set aside on the agenda are where the expo host will actually be in that space and ready to chat with you. And finally, for those of you that are really thinking about what else could be added to the Build Peace conference and just what else could be added to this community, or are finding like really beautiful and generative ways to engage with folks that you're seeing on this platform, the Unconference is a space where you can offer and propose to lead a session. This will happen on Sunday, and we're inviting your proposals throughout the conference. Details of that are both on the agenda, and I think Julie will drop this in the chat. But really, this is an opportunity where you can decide on a theme that you're really excited about or want to impact further based upon some of the content that has happened through the conference, and propose a session specifically through a Google form that is linked in the agenda and also in the chat. And this will happen on Sunday between 1900 to 2100 South African Standard Time. And then the final logistic that I have for folks is digital spaces, digital conferences can sometimes be yourself sitting behind a computer or behind your phone or enjoying that in a park, and just wanted to offer a few guidelines on how we can start to build community in this space. And so first sort of opportunity is the coffee speed networking session. This is, if you've heard of speed dating, this is kind of the conference equivalent, where you sort of sign up, jump in, and are matched with random other people that want to engage in quick conversations. This will happen sort of a few times throughout the conference. The second one that is less of sort of a time-based thing is the lounge. We have several lounges open, and you can use those to either use those as virtual spaces where you can host scheduled meetings with people you know, or meet new people that you know that are just hanging out there. So just encourage you to go in there and drop some images of the places where you are or the things that are inspiring you, and just use that to hold space. And then the final way is just both through the chat, but also through direct messages to attendees. There's a way that you can use the attendees function on the conference platform to get to know, message, and directly sort of engage with other people that are here. So those are all of the logistics, and just wanted to end with gratitude and appreciation and thanks for joining us. We deeply appreciate everyone that's contributing to Build Peace and making this happen with your content, with your care, with your time, and to the vast group of volunteers that are organizing, making these digital spaces happen, opening up the rooms, and just holding some of the energy there too. The first keynote with Metanon is about to start. If it does not start automatically, then just please refresh. And we look forward to spending the next 3 days with you. And thank you for your time.
Thanks, everybody. We'll see you on the platform.